Small. I think somebody's giving me the short chair.
That's good. You got it tonight.
Yeah, I got it tonight. Committee of Adjustment. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Committee of Adjustment hearing for Monday, November 8th. Are there any disclosure of conflict of interest? Seeing none, accept the agenda. Why are there two names on here? But Councillor Madden, I believe you must have it.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noble. Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the Committee of Adjustment hearing agenda for Monday, November 8th, 2021.
Perfect. You guys are gonna have to pass them in since I don't have them here. I don't believe, or do I? No, I do not. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Moving on to ratify the minutes. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wensink, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the Committee of Adjustment hearing minutes of Monday, September 13th, 2021.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to minor variances, MV 16-2021. Councillor Wensink.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley. It is the recommendation of the Planning Department that the Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application MV 16-2021 as submitted.
Okay, thank you. Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So minor variance 16-2021. The owner, Basima El Zahabi, the agent is Bing Lee. The location, so the civic address for this property is 12A and 14 Main Street in Maxville. Main Street South, sorry. The OP designation is Commercial District. The zoning is Village Core Area. So the purpose of the application here, so just before I start, maybe I should show the map. So you would all be familiar with this property as we already did pass a minor variance for the retained portion. So right now we're talking about the severed portion. So there was a severance done at this property there. So we discussed parking spots and I believe and lot area. So for the severed portion. When they did the severance, to maximize the new created lot, so the lot that you see here in pink, they weren't sure exactly where the property line would end up being. So what we're doing now is we're pushing the property line the more east we can to make more room for the new property, which is going to be developed into residential apartments. So that's why this minor variance here is for. It's actually for the blue part where we are passing, well, we are trying to pass a minor variance for the reduced rear yard setback for the blue property. Okay, so I'll go back to the purpose right here. So it's the seek relief for rear yard setback for, I'll show later in the site plan, but for the two buildings. So the two buildings are not at exactly the same depth, so it's for the reduce only the rear yard though. So in core area, when you are using commercial use property, there's zero setback on the side, so we're okay there. And the front setback is another condition, but it's a condition that's being dealt with at the county level. So what they're asking for is road widening. So they're going to widen the county property right down to the front of the building. So we only had to deal with the rear yard setback. That's what we're doing here. As I mentioned, so at the bottom, it's actually to reflect the actual existing building setback. So it's nothing new. It's just the buildings are there. We're creating a new lot. So that's what we are. So that's the property. We cannot see it very clearly here, but it's the green line just behind 12, 12A, and 14 that you see there. So this is going to be the newly created property line, basically. I think, yeah, there you go. So my two red arrows there, they show the two dimensions to the rear property line. So this is going to be the actual shape of this new lot that we have here. So the 3.52 and the 5.3 comes from there. So I think we're required 7.5, I think. So we're asking for these variants that are going to be existing once the severance is passed. So the severance has passed at county level. This is one of the conditions. So this is to clear the actual condition for the severance. Here, the 12, 12A, and 14 are actually in the commercial district. The property that they severed off is in residential district. So it does confirm with the intent of the official plan. That's our zoning here. So our zoning is a little bit different. Both properties are all in the core area zoning, which is also, it complies with the intent of our zoning bylaw, deemed suitable and desirable. It is especially because we already passed the minor variance for the other property on the west side. So at this point, this is the only property that will be affected by that minor variance. So we receive no comments from any members of the public. And is the minor variance minor in nature? It is just because of the fact that it's mostly existing conditions from a newly created lot line. So based on that, planning staff is in the opinion that the applicant request can be considered minor in nature, desirable and appropriate, meets the zoning bylaw and the official plan. And it is the recommendation of the planning department that the committee of adjustment passes minor variance application MV 16-2021. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jacob. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jacob, would this adjustment in the lot line would it have been able to happen if both properties weren't owned by the same person?
It probably would, depending on, like, the neighbors all around didn't say anything. Like, they were notified, they didn't say anything. So the buildings are there already. So it's just the exact location of the property line. So the severance was passed at the county level. So that means that it's compliant with the OP and everything. So this, because it's a condition, this should technically not be enough to reverse the severance. So I guess my answer is yes, it would have been allowed even if it's a different owner. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, and moving on to adjournment. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley. There being no further business to discuss, the Committee of Adjustment hearing was adjourned at 6:38.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Joanne, can you pass down yours? Okay, and now we will move on to our planning meeting, a public meeting of planning. Are there any disclosure of conflict of interest? Seeing none, accept the agenda. Councillor Massey.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the public meeting of planning agenda of Monday, November 8th, 2021.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, ratify the minutes. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wensick, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the minutes of the public meeting of planning of Monday, September 13th, 2021.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. And zoning amendments, Z14, 2021. Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, I just added this slide here just to remind council that there's no actual recommendation and there's no voting at this point from council. It's just basically for information purposes, and the actual zoning bylaw will be presented at the constituent council meeting. So zoning bylaw 14/2021, the owner of this property is Mary Leduc. The location, the civic address is 1291 County Road 34, Dalkeith. So this is where it is. So the curve that you see here just left of the yellow arrow is actually the curve in the 34. So we're pretty much northern end of the township here. This is the property, and this is a closer look at the property itself. So this is the typical, just to show the right there. So this is the typical lollipop severance that Mary Leduc applied for a surplus dwelling. So basically, just want to show here if anyone noticed. So if you look at the plan and at the survey that they did, there's the little red dot there where the dwelling is. So of course they're keeping the dwelling, but if like it doesn't show on the survey, but the survey line is actually right in the middle of that barn there. So you see there's a little driveway going to the field. So the property line will be where the barn is. So it'll go east-west, right where the barn is. So the reason for that is because another condition of the severance is that they demolish the barn and the silos. So this will, they will have to demolish before they get their severance. So if you see that the plans don't match, the barn is actually going to be completely gone. So only the garage that you see there and the house will remain. So it will solely be a residential property. So the official plan designation. So as you see here, it's all white. So that's all agricultural resource land. So it's surrounded by agricultural properties and residential uses property that are also ag. And this is our zoning. Blue is ag. And so there's just a little bit of floodplain in the middle, but most of the property is on agriculture. So the purpose for the severance, again, it's just to comply with condition 2 and 6 of consent application B92-2021. So here what we're doing, the severed portion, which is in this case, the house, where the house is going to be. So we're prohibiting agricultural use on this property. We're keeping it to a minimum acreage, which in this case came out to about 3 acres. And we're acknowledging the minimum lot frontage from 45 to the proposed 10 meters. So it's going to be that long driveway is actually 10 meter wide. The retained portion, we're prohibiting residential development, of course. And I know the question of the entrances come often. So at this property there's of course the existing entrance for 1291 County Road 34. That's going to stay there. The field that's going to be created currently does not have an entrance on 34. The plan is to keep it that way also because the field is easily accessible via other fields. So the plan is not really to use the residential entrance, but to enter the field via other entrances. If they would want to apply, they probably could via the counties, but right now the plan is to keep it that way. And it should not create an issue either. So that's the severance map, sorry, that we have. And, sorry, that's our survey right there. So provincial policy statement. So just very quickly, you're all aware that we have to keep these lots at a minimum. That's what we're doing here, 3 acres. The remainder is about, I think it's 97 acres actually. Yeah, it is, yeah, 97 acres. So we have to prohibit residential on the other property and prohibit agricultural on the residential property. That's what we're doing. So it complies with the PPS. And pretty much the same thing for the official plan. So just to make sure it complies, we have that exception. That's what we're doing here. So in conclusion, based on criteria above, the proposed zoning amendment conforms to the PPS and the official plan amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to severance B 15321.
All right. So this severance here, so these are, again, just for information purposes, that's why you have no reports. One of them we'll actually see again because it will require a planning application. So we'll hear about, I think it's a zoning amendment that we'll have to do. This one here, you're probably aware of what's going on, at least a little bit. So the owner, Canada Corp Company, which is actually Mike COA, he bought the 2 existing properties on McDougall Street here, just north of Alexandria. So you've probably noticed that the Dean is playing around with the sewer to try to connect these 3 properties. So they were existing lot of record, so we're not creating the 3 lots, so that's why there's no planning application whatsoever. We're just, here you'll see the severance is what Mike wants to do. So the zoning for the property is residential R1, the official plan is residential district. And the purpose is to separate a parcel of land to be added to the abutting property. So this is a severance, so that's where it is, so just north of Alexandria. So it's just the same street, the corner of Murray Motorsport, just north of the school. And that's the 3 properties. So you see the shape of the properties right now. We played around with Mike to try to figure out what we want to do, what we could do. So the properties are all zone R1, and the intent right now is to build single-family dwellings. So they're smaller, the setbacks are smaller, but just because of the middle property that you see here is on an angle, so it actually follows some other properties further down the street, but I'm not so sure why they're shaped that way. So what Mike wants to do here, so basically there's the 3 properties there. Mike is just severing a piece of each of the 2 right properties to merge it on the other one. Oh, there you go. So the pink triangle on the left is going to be added to the white property, and the orange and the blue, that's going to be 1 property, and then the remainder red property on the right side is going to be the other property. So instead of having the houses aligned with, because in the middle one, the blue one that you see there, the only way to build a decent house with the driveway in front of the house was to have the house parallel to the property line. So it made no sense with the rest of the street. So that's what he's proposing here. So the 2 next severances, actually the 2 little triangles that you see there, it's basically the same property. After that is done, he's going to be able to put single-family dwelling on each property, and it will. So all the lots are all big enough in lot area. Lot frontage is fine. Everything is okay. So that's the off the 2. So that's the first triangle. It's the survey for the first triangle. We're merging with the other one. The next one, can I just carry on?
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah. So the next one, as I said, is pretty much the same. So same owner, same zoning, same purpose, everything. The only difference is that we're taking this triangle here and we're merging it on to the other property. So after that's done, he's going to have three properties. All right, and the last one, B155-2021. This one, the owner is Danielle and...
Does anybody have any questions on the other? Councilor Massey.
How come that it ever came to those lots were divided like that? That's
Well, the large property, if I go back, okay, there you go. So the middle one looks like it follows the street that's across that lot. So I don't know if it has anything to do with that lot or whatever, but all the other properties, except for the one on the corner, all the north property line is in an angle. So it seems like it has something to do with that, but the real purpose of that shape, I don't know. We did not find the original severance of those properties, so we don't know when they were created, but they were always like that based on our research.
this council not like correct those mistakes and square these things off, or like it's kind of like if we look down the road, I don't know. I would say, oh, you're cutting my grass. I know you're not here. This is my line. Like it's awfully.
Well, that's why I think he's going through this process.
Yeah,
There's
no,
a
but
process.
they're not square like you, a lot would. You see,
We can't do that. The applicant has to apply to do that, and that's exactly what we've done. So
no, I
we
know, but
squared them
even the
up.
back of it, the lots are round and
Yeah, but they follow on to somebody else's property. That's somebody else's property.
whatever. It's just that it sounds.
Yeah, I agree, but yeah, nothing we can do for sure. And the county level won't, like, it's its existing lot of record. So to change, the only legal way to change that is to go through that severance process. Good.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, yeah, so the last severance here, Danielle and Nicole Dubois. The location, 9 Main Street South, Maxville. So that is the building where they had the girls, country girls club cafe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's that building there. The official plan designation is commercial district. The zoning is village core area, and the purpose of this one is to divide the parcel of land into 2 parcels for the purpose of creating a new residential property. So that's where it is, just south of the tracks in Maxville. So the address, that's exactly what, when we tell people that our lines are just for information purposes, we have a good example here. So this is, the lines are fine. It's just the way the buildings are shown on the picture here. So where my red arrow is, that's the building, that's the existing building. The address that you see is off of Main Street. So it's the Country Girls Cafe there. It's not that, I don't think it's still that, but anyway, that's that building. And what they're proposing, so as you can see here, their property goes right down to J.H. Monroe Avenue. So on the picture that I have, so both the blue and the red are together, just here. So it's all one big property. So what Monsieur Dubois is proposing is to sever the property in half. So he's going to keep the blue parcel for the commercial/residential property, which matches with the core area zoning. And the property on the east side will become a new lot for residential development. So in this case, this one, we're going to see it again, we'll need a minor variance for the lot frontage. So both, the property is only, they're not missing a lot. I think it's 14.9 and they need 50 meters, but they still need to go and do the minor variance anyways for other things. There will be the side yard setbacks. There will be, again, the front yard that probably the counties are going to ask for the same thing, where they're going to want the road widening right down to the front of the building. In this case, it was discussed with the owner and he's fine with it, but what the counties and the township has discussed, it's, I think, mostly the counties, but they're going to ask for the lots to be, for the existing wells to be decommissioned. So when there's a new, I guess it's in the official plan, when there's a new created lot and there's an existing well that's no longer in use, so because we brought water into Maxville, they don't need the well, so it's going to be asked to be decommissioned. In this case, it's kind of a good thing because it's very close to where that new property line is, so may have created some issues. So the well is going to be decommissioned. There's going to be all the setbacks for the existing building, not the rear, but there's an existing garage that we're keeping. So we're going to evaluate that when we get the survey. But this is just to clear that. It's just for information purposes that this is going on, basically. So that's the county's little image there. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on that last one, so the pink lot then, will they access off of?
J.H. Monroe.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
the frontage is actually J.H. Monroe, exactly, yeah. And the lot area complies with our zoning, so there should be lots of room for a single-family dwelling. Perfect. Yeah.
Further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, motion to adjourn. Councilor Noble. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We will take a 5-minute break till 7 o'clock and we will begin our regular meeting of council. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to members of council, staff, and the public here and on Facebook. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, motion to accept the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? Yes, Councilor Wensing.
Thank you. Could I please add the Maxville Horticultural Society request, please?
We'll put that under new business. Okay. Motion to the amended agenda. Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the agenda of the regular meeting of Council on Monday, November the 8th, 2021, as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, moving on to adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noble, that the minutes of the following meeting be adopted as circulated. Regular meeting of Council, October 25th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. And moving on to delegations, I'd like to welcome Todd Lehue from the SDNG counties to discuss the historic tour project. Welcome, Todd.
Good evening, Your Worship. Can I remove my mask here, or is that allowed?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, Your Worship, to be before you this evening and members of council and staff to discuss the STG Historic Tour. I brought with me a prop. I'm not sure if it's okay back there, if you'd like it brought up to have a look at it, what would be a good space to put it. And it's kind enough to bring it up. The reason for being here this evening, Your Worship, is to really give a council an opportunity to hear firsthand the plan with respect to the SDG Historic Tour. Our goal is to begin this project essentially now. This is the first meeting that I've been to at the lower level to speak with members of our local council here in North Glengarry. And really, we want to talk about in general terms what the project's all about and what it's going to bring to not only the township here, but to really all across SDNG. So with your permission, Your Worship, I'll begin the presentation.
Sure.
So the concept, and this is my first time using this kind of technology, so I hope it's going to work. There we go. So the concept as laid out in our PowerPoint presentation is fairly simple. What we want to do is create an SDG-based historic tour with 3 plaques in each of the 6 local municipalities in SDNG. And as I said, this is a real-world example of a plaque. This plaque is going to be installed in Cornwall, actually, at the Port Theatre. They're in the process now of creating some green space at the Port Theatre, and this plaque will be installed in that location. So these plaques, for our purposes with the SDG Historic Tour, we'd like to see them installed in clusters in areas where there's high visibility and high foot traffic. The reason why we want to do that is the tour, we think, will complement other tours and other plaques that are in the region. And what we want to do is create hubs where individuals congregate right now and where they can see these plaques and enjoy them. In a previous life, I was the director of Heart of the City in Cornwall. When we rolled this project out, we created 40 plaques in Cornwall. And the first iteration of the plaques, we kind of spread them out all over. And what we found out, we were hoping, is that people would travel from one plaque to the next and kind of see the community as well as the plaques. Didn't exactly work out that way. So when we went with the second and the third iteration of the tour, we installed them in clusters. And that way individuals can see the different plaques, can read the stories, and then potentially move on to another location where there is, once again, a collection of plaques that people can enjoy. So as I said, we've done this before. When I was with Heart of the City, there are plaques located at the Lost Villages Museum in South Stormont, as well as the commercial and waterfront districts in the city of Cornwall. And really what we want to do with this tour in SDNG is this will serve as a vehicle for expanding our Where Ontario Began branding. This particular plaque doesn't have that brand name because, as I said, it's for the city of Cornwall, but you'll note in the plaque that I submitted as part of this PowerPoint presentation and some of the others, we've removed those references to the city of Cornwall. We branded them like we expect to brand them for the SDG tour. So the timeline is as follows. At its meeting of October 18th, Tara Kirkpatrick and I did a small presentation for County Council just to kind of, really that would be the first time where we had a presentation in front of elected officials to tell them about this project. So the goal is to have the project continue with presentations before not only your council, but the other 5 of the local municipalities. What we want to do between now and obviously the end of the project is work through research, preparation, and production of the plaques. And that's going to take place over the fall, winter, and spring that we're coming into. And plaque completion will take place before the end of 2022. Our budget for this project is as follows. It's fair to estimate that a plaque is going to cost in the neighborhood of about $2,500. And that takes into account the artist's fee for creating the plaque, as well as plaque production and the manufacture and installation of the plaques. The county has identified its own funds for this project. I'm not here to ask for any extra money. We will be paying for this at the upper level. This evening, and really it's about partnerships at this point. This project has the potential to create multi-layered partnerships, not only at the local level, but really throughout the region, including SDNG, as I said, all of its local municipalities, historical societies, local businesses, as well as community-based organizations. And of particular importance is the relationships that we want to foster by way of these partnerships. We want to be able to liaise with individuals in local municipalities who are experts, whether it be members of staff, members of local historical societies. Really, we want individuals who can tell us about the stories that we want to tell, so we can tell those stories in an effective and accurate way. The content for the plaques will be, as I said, we'll be finding out what we want to put on these plaques by talking to local historical societies and local experts at the local level to find out what exactly do we want to say and how do we want to tell those stories. It's important for us to be able to do that through this process. When I was with Heart of the City in Cornwall, what we would often do is the artist and I would meet with, whether it was representatives from different agencies, government organizations, or historical society members, and we would talk to them and find out what are the stories that we want to tell. In particular, we did that with Jim Brownell and his Lost Villages Museum in South Stormont. And of course, they have a metric ton of material. In fact, they had too much to pull from to be able to tell those stories. But that's what we want to do, is we want to identify individuals within the local municipalities that can help us tell those stories and tell them in an accurate way. The plaques are essentially made up of a central painting, as you can see. Those paintings are done by, or they were done by an artist in Cornwall named Pierre Giroux. Pierre studied in Italy before returning to Canada. His paintings are incredible. They're shown at galleries in Edmonton and out in Vancouver. He really is a world-renowned talent. So he created these particular plaques. He started with just basically a sketch, and every time we would create a plaque, we would liaise with the individuals we were working with on a regular basis. So we would meet with them, they would give us an idea of the stories they would want to tell. Pierre would create a sketch. We would return to have another meeting to ensure that the sketch was what the partners were looking for. He would then go back and create a watercolor. We would do the same thing again and make sure that's what they were looking for. So throughout this process, there's continual communication between ourselves and our partners to ensure that everybody knows what we're producing and everybody's happy with the final product. In Cornwall, and I can see this happening with the county as well as local municipalities, there were a number of spin-offs that came as a result of this project. In Cornwall, there was a book that was created, both hardcover and softcover. We sold out of those books fairly quickly. We created calendars where the top part of the calendar would be the image from the plaque and the bottom part would be the actual calendars. We always used to start rolling those out around this time of year. Once again, they would sell out as kind of a lead up to Christmas. And I was at a seminar in dealing with historical societies from Eastern Ontario. And what we were told at this seminar in Kingston was that the biggest untapped market in our province is history. People are having a hard time monetizing it, and they're having a hard time figuring out how to tell those stories. But we kind of found a way to do that. I have to tell you that the revenue spin-off we got from books and calendars wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was money that we were able to gather and then reinvest in the project and find different levers to tell the stories that we were telling and find different ways to engage with the community. A neat part of this project that we'd like to roll out is, like many communities, SD&G and its local municipalities already have a plethora of plaques located really throughout the region. So part of this project will be to do basically an inventory of those plaques. So we would speak with individual staff and other experts at the local level, find out where the plaques are that we have, and then create a roster of where those plaques are so that staff knows, the general public knows, and we're going to find a way at the county level to try and create an online experience for individuals. Through our GIS department, we can create maps that are interactive. Flavor for the stories that we're trying to tell. And that accomplishes two things. One, it creates, as I said, a roster of where these plaques are, but it's also another lever of engagement that we can use with the general public. And I think everybody in this room has probably got a cell phone. You can use your phone and access the tour and find out exactly what it's all about. There we go. So location, like anything else, is going to be a key pillar to the success of this project. And the ultimate decision on where these plaques will be located will require the input of all of our partners, but especially this council and members of staff. Some key points to remember when we're talking about choosing a location for these plaques include traffic. As I said earlier, we want to make sure that these plaques are located in high traffic areas where people will be able to see them. We want to avoid saturation. I had a great conversation with Councillor Gardner from South Dundas and about this project after our meeting October the 18th, and it was her suggestion that we try to stay away from the waterfront at South Dundas because there's already a number of plaques in that location, and we just started throwing out locations like Williamsburg perhaps, or maybe Brinston, to see if perhaps there are stories and parts of history that we can tell that already kind of haven't been touched by plaques already. And also we want to take into account the cost. So a location of a plaque, if we've got an existing building or an existing structure where these plaques can be mounted, that saves a ton of money because then we aren't digging into the ground. In Cornwall, when we ran this project out, we ended up in some situations where we had to dig and put in concrete bases, which, as you know, can really drive the cost of this project up. At the county building in Cornwall, they avoided that problem by using sonotubes. So they just drilled a hole in the ground, sunk the sonotube in, filled it with concrete, and then attached the base of the plaque to those sonotubes. So there are ways around those costs, but the cheapest way to do this is to try and find locations where there's structures, walls, or something like that where we can actually affix these plaques to an existing structure. The cost is quite a bit cheaper. You're talking about $200 for a mounting bracket versus $2,000, if you will, if you want to start digging holes in the ground to put concrete in. So that can save a lot of money when we're talking about the location of these particular plaques. Next steps, and what do we need to proceed from here? So as I said, the purpose of this meeting really with local municipalities is to request support for this project in the following ways. to come up with some ideas on location, on where these plaques should go. We really want to talk to staff, and if you can connect us with historical society members in this community to talk about what the stories are that we want to tell, that would be an incredible asset to have. And interest. These meetings now are really our first salvo, if you will, of getting out and talking about this tour in a meaningful way and generating a little bit of interest. There was a little story in the Standard Freeholder just last week following the county council meeting, and I already had a call from an individual who wants to be a researcher, an individual who knows a lot about this region. So there's already some interest out there. So really, like I said, what we're trying to do is build on that interest, talk to local municipalities, gather input back, and develop a little bit of a partnership where we know that there will be individuals that we're going to need to lean on in terms of finding out what the stories that we want to tell, and then obviously finding out locations where these plaques will go. That really, Your Worship, is the basis of my presentation today. Just one more thing, actually, I should mention is that I did talk a little bit about the GIS component that could come with this tour. We're also looking at creating a feature on our tourism website, whereontariobegan.ca, and that will include a driving tour, so people will be able to see where these plaques are and get an idea if they wanted to spend an afternoon and learn about local history. We could create maps and routes for them where they'd be able to do that. So that, as I said, Your Worship, is the basis of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Todd, for your presentation. I'm very excited to see that the counties has taken an initiative on this or whatever. The Township of North Glengarry has had an Arts, Culture, and Heritage Committee for 12 years now. I think it would be a perfect fit for the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Committee to take this project on as well, and to work with you on this. And we have some fine historians on the committee, so I think we could solve that issue by doing that. So it might be a good fit for that.
That's a great idea. I mean, I was just going to put my name forward for it, but Jeff, I mean, if that's the committee you want to do it, we're going to do it that way. Are there any other questions or comments from anybody? But yeah, no, I do definitely think that's the way to go. And plus, Alan at the archives has extensive knowledge of North and South Glengarry. So I think we've got lots of people that can help you out here. Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that Mayor McDonald's been trying to get on that committee for years and has not yet been successful.
Huh. Don't I name the committees?
Thank you, Todd, for this presentation. I know that when you presented to County Council, everyone was really excited about it, and it sounds like everyone here is as well. So looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none? Oh, go ahead, Todd.
If I may, Your Worship, I'm glad that the committee is available. I'd be happy to work with them. The last thing I want to leave you with, though, if I could, is really to start thinking about some locations for where you'd like these plaques to be. And I don't need an answer tonight, unless, of course, you got one, but if you don't, that's fine. But really start to put some thought into where these plaques could go, because the key to anything like this is picking a good location where people are actually going to see them. So I would just leave you with that.
I think everybody's minds are churning right now as we speak. So
Very good.
thanks a lot, Todd. We
Thank
really
you once again
appreciate
for your
coming
time
out
this
tonight.
evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to staff reports, Community Services Department Accessibility Plan, Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wensink. The councillor receives staff report number CS 2021-32. The council adopts the revised multi-year accessibility plan for the Township of North Glengarry.
Thank you, Michael. And I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I wasn't sure she was taking it.
In regards to the accessibility report that I'm presenting to you tonight, I'm pleased to advise you that you're seeing the revamped version that was initially presented to you in 2019. And this brings forward all of the different steps that the township has done over the last years to meet our accessibility requirement. One of the components of the Act does also state that whenever the municipality undergoes a large project, that we consult with our accessibility committee members, and we speak about the components that we can address to ensure that we remove as many barriers as possible. As you know, we're undergoing the refurbishment of the Glengarry Sports Palace. So we had the pleasure of having some of the members with us virtually and in person, and actually do a walkthrough of the facility and have the engineering designs and speak to them about the proposed changes. And we were able to take back their suggestions to the engineers. So those were also included as steps that we're going to be undergoing in the future in the accessibility plan. You'll also see that the plan itself contains a chart that makes it very easy for us to track all of the different components that have been addressed over the years. Some buildings are fully accessible. We've met all of our compliance. Others still have work to do. And the township's commitment has always been, whenever we undergo construction or whenever we make changes, that we work towards removing barriers. So that's a project that will always continuously be there. And in addition to that, it's staff's opinion that we shouldn't just meet the minimum standards when it comes to accessibility, but also look for the future. So to try to include components that we know will well serve our community at this time and in the future. So the plan that you have before you is a plan that's going to be submitted to the AODA as part of our required reporting. And this was actually our biannual review. So it actually coincided really well that we had the plans for the Glengarry Sports Palace to review at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ann. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, moving on to CIP application signage for 23 Kenyon Street East in Alexandria. Councillor Wensing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams. The council received staff report number CS 2021-33, and that council approves the addition of signage to the Community Improvement Plan project at 23 Kenyon Street East in Alexandria, as submitted by the property owner, Lucy Lajoie. Program C, Civic Address Grant, representing one civic sign provided by the municipality as part of its civic sign program. And Program C, Commercial Signage Grant, representing a matching grant of 50% up to a maximum of $2,000. Total grants, $2,000.
Thank you, Councillor. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council will probably recall that this property came to them back in July, where they were able to benefit from Program B, which is the Building Improvement Grant, the Building and Permit Grant, which is Program E, and as well as a municipal loan. They are now adding Program C to that inventory. And as you can see by the different diagrams that were proposed, they have a logo and part of a signage which will include a metal scroll at the top, which is going to be installed at the corner of Dominion and Kenyon Street. Of course, the sight lines will be respected. That's part of the application through the building department for the installation of the signage that they're going to be doing. But at this time, they are asking for the approval of that grant component for their project. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. 2022 Community Grants Program, Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives staff report number CS 2021-34, and that Council approves the following grants conditional to the approval of the Community Grant Program funding in the 2022 municipal budget.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a program that comes back to you every fall, and of course it is conditional to the budget exercise for 2022, conditional on council's approval for funding for that general ledger item. You will notice that this year the ask is quite reduced compared to most years. In the past, we've actually maxed out the program, which was capped at $25,000. We took the time as staff to contact the different community organizations that had not submitted applications. A couple of applications were a little late in arriving to us, and that was because they didn't realize that the cutoff date was the 31st of October, so we were able to work with them to make sure that they were able to submit. But in other instances, we had the very pleasurable news of finding out that those groups were able now to stand alone and to bring these projects forward on their own. So the purpose of the grant is being met. So we're actually incubating events that now can stand alone and move forward by themselves without the support of the township. The unfortunate thing is we do have a reduced number of events this year, but I think that we can singularly attribute that to COVID. We are hoping that by next year, things will be back to normal, and our staff will certainly promote the program vigorously next year to ensure that we get the most applications possible. So the applicants this year are the Centre Lahil Center in the amount of $3,000, the Kenyan Agricultural Society in the amount of $3,500, the Maxville and District Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $3,500, and the Glengarry Sports Hall of Fame in the amount of $2,000. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions or comments? So will we be just, this is like, that's all we're recommending for a budget, right?
So the budget line item will be $12,000. The in-kind doesn't count. It's always there so that the township does know what the true cost of an event is.
Perfect. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Department Voting Methods 2022 election, Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Manley, that Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives staff report AD 2021-17, and that Council of the Township of North Glengarry directs staff to draft a voting procedures policy, which will include paper ballots, telephone, and online voting methods.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Sarah?
Mayor. So the report in front of council this evening is for the voting methods for the 2022 election. So staff wanted to bring this to council's attention and to discussion this evening. As noted in the resolution, we are recommending that we continue with paper, online, and telephone as well. In the report also is indicated key dates for 2022, part of which was changed with Bill 218, which was the nomination period changing, and then also nomination day. And you'll notice that the voting day for next year is October 24th, 2022. I also included in the report some of the statistics that was given to the newly elected council in 2019. So it does speak to the voter turnout, and as well as what we did for the by-election. And within the report is also some of the statistics, which is how we sort of discussed among staff, as well as I'm part of a group of clerks that are all getting together about how people are doing their election next year. And based on the voting method and the fact that we still have 16% of our voters using the telephone, we felt that it's significant enough that we continue with it. As well, we found with the paper ballots for the by-election, the setup here at the Sandfield Center was very successful, with an in and an out with, to adhere to the COVID-19 protocols from the EOHU. So staff are suggesting that we do some advanced polls so we could have some of the people who would like to get it early on before we've done just the paper ballots on the day of the election, but it does make for a very busy day for staff. And that way we can have people out, because we did find with the by-election that a lot of voters came out the very first day, a lot in the morning. And we're also going to be offering some evening and advance polls, because we did hear that we had some people who were working past 4 o'clock, so we felt that was important. I've also spoken to the vendor that we utilized in 2018. I was very disappointed in the telephone voting as far as the bilingual components. And what we've heard from them is they're offering the opportunity for one of our staff to actually record their own voice. What that will allow is the proper pronunciation of some last names. We had some very, difficult last names, which, we certainly know here in North Glengarry how to pronounce them, but they had some issues. And when I listened back, I thought I know that person. I wouldn't even know what the last name is based on how they translated it. It was very happy to hear that, and that was another reason why I think we're okay to keep the telephone. I've also been very clear with the vendor. There's only a couple of these vendors out there, unfortunately, so we may very well, even though the RFP's gone out, as indicated in the report, we may end up with the same vendor again. Is that I was clear that a lot of the translations need to be done well in advance, because most of the words are very common across Ontario. So, choose who you want to vote for mayor, or however they worded it. It's a standard. And last year when we got our translations on the ballots, as well as the translations on the voter information card, they were very wrong. And again, we were having staff at North Glengarry look at them, saying that, residents deserve better translations and better service than what we received. So that was my first election here in North Glengarry last time. And so this will be my fourth election under my belt. So I have some experience. And so I think we'll run a better election here as far as communication, as well as making sure we can get the most voters out to vote in 2022. So certainly we can have a discussion, but I think what we put forth here is a very good solution for 2022.
Okay, is there any opportunity for us to move the paper ballot to other locations within the municipality on different nights? I would think it would be great if we could, hit Maxville, Dunvegan, Dalkeith, some of these places that if we're really trying to get people out to vote, let's just make it as easy as possible to get them out to vote. So, maybe we give an evening at some of these places, and I think that would go a long way towards getting more people to vote.
Absolutely. So when I bring back the procedure to council, I can certainly include that. It's not a problem. We use a tabulator system, so it's all locked down and secure. So that's not a problem for us to certainly move it around the municipality.
Any further questions or comments? That's perfect. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. 2022 meeting schedule. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report AD 2021-18, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the 2022 meeting schedule as attached in Schedule A.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a very simple report. This is just for council to approve our regular council meetings in committee of the whole for next year. We've done our best to anticipate, obviously, statutory holidays, as well as it looks like we're going to be going back to conferences, which is great news. And as well, there's a bit of a pause around the election, and we may need to look at a lame duck situation later on, but I think this is what we have for now.
Okay, any questions or comments? Now, what did I read? The first day of council was November 15th. Seems a little long to go to December 5th. New term of office commenced November 15th, 2022.
On the schedule, or?
No, in your previous report, it says November 15th is the new date for council to start.
Okay.
And then our inaugural is only on December 5th. I think that we need to be sworn in prior to that. So I would change the regular meeting of Monday, November 14th to November
15th.
15th
Yep.
or whatever.
For sure.
Tuesday.
So, Mr. Mayor, you're suggesting we do the inaugural meeting on November 15th?
Yep.
So you're saying, yep. We can make that change.
Okay. Otherwise, everyone is good? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, Planning, Building, and Bylaw Enforcement Department, Bylaw 48-2021, Ottawa Street No Parking Bylaw. Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report BP 2021-30, and that the Council of Township of North Glengarry adopts bylaw number 48-2021, being a bylaw to rescind bylaw 33-2009, and that bylaw number 48-2021 be read a first, second, and third time and adopted in open council on November 8, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Jacob?
Sorry. As you know, the bylaw enforcement officer does the enforcement of the on-street parking. We had a little bit of an issue because of this here, so that's why it's basically just a cleanup bylaw. So we have a bylaw number 33-2009. So based on what we have found back in 2009, there was a commercial property on Ottawa Street. And when the trucks came in to unload or to load, it created a lot of issues with traffic because they would just park in the middle of the road and block all the streets. So because of Ottawa Street is a one-way street, there was no way to go. So they created a bylaw saying that there's no parking on the east or west side of Ottawa Street on the north-south portion to avoid this traffic issue there. So residential properties along Ottawa Street. And the bylaw, the way it's written, you have it in the report, but it includes the entire Ottawa Street. And as you know, the east-west portion of Ottawa Street, where we have the park there, the center, this is also included, the Mill Street Park, this was also kind of included. It was really confusing. So basically, we're not enforcing the bylaw. So with the bylaw enforcement officer, we are requesting to rescind the bylaw to avoid any other issues with this. So we're not changing, like it doesn't change anything for winter parking. This would still be enforceable exactly as it is now. Basically, just removes the no parking and loading zone on Ottawa Street. So we did consult with roads department. They're okay. Fire is okay too. We didn't really care. We were going to rescind it anyways, but be polite. But the only thing that roads said is that they may request for a no parking from a certain distance of that corner there on Ottawa Street onto County Road 43. But we would not need a bylaw for that because we do have the existing street circulation bylaw that does have an exemption where roads can decide to put signs like that. So it's basically just a cleanup bylaw. We haven't used this bylaw in years, and we're requesting for the bylaw to be rescinded. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Massey.
That's a good idea, but I see that on that street, there's parked on both sides, which create it's a small road, a street, so it kind of creates a problem with be one side better,
We did not receive any complaints for that. It seems that, and if it would be a two-way street, definitely an issue, but because the street is just a one-way going north, it seems that it's not an issue. We didn't receive any complaints on it, really. But with roads, we could check. We were in the process with the manager of roads to review which street have one-ways, because we have other issues, like I'm sure you're aware, we have other issues in the township for one-ways and stuff like that, and parking. So the bylaw, the actual bylaw number 3068, which we can't rescind because it's our circulation bylaw in the entire town of Alexandria, we were going to review that because that has all the description of every road and where you can park, like on the north side, east side, from that corner to that corner. It's a long process, so we have to sit down with roads and the bylaw officer to see. But that street doesn't seem to be an issue for now.
Just that some guy there goes with his farm machinery sometimes, and it's tight a little bit.
Is that you? Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, consent application B145, 2021, Councilor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Madden, that the council passes a resolution required for consent application B145-2021 for the severed portion to be exempt as per official plan S8-12-13-12 from having frontage on an open and maintained road allowance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a it's a funny one. It's a resolution that's being requested from council to be able to proceed with the severance process. So the way it's written may not be that clear. So basically, before this severance application can even be presented to county council to see if it's approved or not, they need to have municipal council's endorsement. Why? Because maybe scroll on. Okay, right there. Yeah. So the owner here is Florin, Florin Valien, and he's severing up. So he owns the blue and the pink property right now. And what he wants to do, he wants to sever the pink portion and keep the blue portion. So he wants to create an agricultural lot. He would sell the land. The pink is actually 74 acres. So it matches like it's compliant with our zoning bylaw for minimum area. But the main issue with this property is that it's on La Pensée Lane. So La Pensée Lane ends approximately, just maybe a little bit more west, but approximately in the middle of that blue portion. So the road is the two red lines that you see at the bottom, but where we maintain the road, it only goes down to approximately the middle of that blue property. So for a property to be created according to our zoning bylaw and to the official plan and everything, of course, the property has to have frontage on maintained road allowance. So in this case, it isn't. So the only reason why we need the council's approval, basically, is because even though in this case, there's no frontage on a maintained road allowance, there is still the unmaintained road allowance. So there's still access onto that property, even though it's not maintained, it's farmland. So it's going to be used solely for agricultural purposes, just like many other properties in the township that do access their agricultural land via unmaintained road allowance. So they just want to make sure basically that council is aware that they're proposing a severance on an unmaintained and unopened road allowance in this case. So there is an exemption for this. I have it in my report. The official plan does permit that, but before it goes down to county council, it needs to be approved by municipal council. And also because it's a severance in agricultural lands, we're creating a 74 acres. But the reason why we are able to keep the blue portion without passing a zoning bylaw amendment to prohibit residential development, it's because half of that blue portion is in rural district and in rural zoning. So the blue portion is half rural, half ag, but the pink is all ag. So the pink is compliant at 74. The blue is also compliant with rural designation, but not with ag. But anyway, the way it's written, they can do that type of a severance, and they just need that resolution from council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That was very, very clear.
It was? Why? Sorry.
No, it was pretty good. I was a little confused before, but Councilor Massey.
Mr. Mayor, Jacob, I know the exact land because I used to farm back there. That road down La Pensée Lane, there's a creek there, and then a little bridge or semi-maintained bridge or something. But that pink version, you say that's going to be converted to ag land? It's already ag land, but we cannot permit anything because there was a fellow 10 years ago that tried to separate the two. That was the township's response because he needed a maintained road and he wasn't going to put in 100,000 because he wanted to do lots there. So now, if we agree to this big portion has to remain ag, and we cannot permit any residential. Is that?
Yeah, that's the case. Yeah, so we don't have the conditions right now because it hasn't passed at county council. So when it passes there, the township will be able to add conditions to that severance, and one of the conditions will be that the whole pink portion, the whole agricultural portion, will have a zoning to prohibit any residential development. Never, no.
Okay, Councillor Manley?
What about the blue portion?
The blue portion will not be able to be severed again. But,
Sorry, okay.
but it's because if they want to sever again, they will not have the 74 acres again to have a decent property. So, and the only, like, I think it's 48 meters that's of road. So the blue portion has frontage of about 48 meters. So we may have to even apply a minor variance because I think it's 45, so they may be close, but when we get the survey, we'll have all these answers and we'll be able to add the conditions. But because there's some rural land in there, they're able to do that, but they will not be able to sever again though, because they will not have the proper acreage to sever another property.
Just to follow up, the white property, Jacob,
Yep.
is that a different owner?
Yeah, so the little square
Right.
at the bottom is a different property, and you see there's some kind of a laneway going up.
Yeah.
So this laneway leads to that kind of triangular portion.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So yeah, it's two different parcels right now. The property is actually shaped like that, like the blue and pink are together, and that's the actual shape of the property.
Councillor Massey, we're not changing the shape of it.
Sorry, that property was one piece not too long ago. Now it's going to be three pieces.
Yeah, I think if it was severed before 2005, it doesn't count as a severed. I'm not sure of the exact date.
We're not severing it. All you're asking is that we're consenting to this going to county council, or to the counties for them to look at the severance. Okay, any other further questions or comments? Sorry, Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jacob, I'm looking at the Google Maps, and I think I'm looking at the blue portion. Now, are you saying to put in a road that can get them to the pink portion, which I believe I'm looking at, doesn't really have a whole lot of road there?
No, we're not adding any road. So you see there's already La Pensée Lane, where it's written La Pensée Lane
Yep.
there. So this is the maintained road allowance right now. The plows go right down there, and you see the roundabout there. This is where we go up to there.
Okay.
Okay, so from here to there, that's the frontage of the blue portion.
Yeah.
But past that, it's an unmaintained road allowance.
Yep.
So like according to our zoning bylaw, a property has to have frontage on a maintained road allowance.
Right.
So in this case, it doesn't have frontage on a maintained road allowance, but it does have frontage on an unmaintained road allowance. So the condition for that is that you pass a prohibit residential on the other portion and whatnot. But what I'm asking here is basically a resolution saying that council is aware that the newly created property does not have frontage on a maintained road allowance.
Right, so my question is, do we have to make it
No.
a maintained road?
No, not at all.
Okay, so because it's not gonna be rented, he doesn't have to have a real road to get to that pink portion?
Exactly. Yeah, he will have to use the unmaintained road allowance.
Okay, so we're not opening a whole
No.
Pandora's box.
No, we're not
So-
changing road maintenance, we're not adding roads, we're not doing anything like that. We're just acknowledging that this property will solely have frontage on an unmaintained road.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, unfinished business, consent agenda, Councillor Massey.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, move by myself, seconded by Councillor Noble, that the council of the Township of North Glengarry receive the item from the consent agenda for information purposes only.
Thank you. Any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. New business, Maxville Horticulture, Councillor Wensing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you all know, the Maxville and District Horticultural Society are a group of wonderful volunteers that keep Maxville beautiful with the flowers that they look after at the signs and municipal buildings. They are celebrating their 100th anniversary in 2023. That year, they're also hosting the Ontario Horticultural Association Annual Conference. But what the president has asked me is that council consider looking at the year 2022 as the year of the garden. There's a whole proclamation that I can read, or I can ask about it here and bring it to another meeting. That's what they're asking us to consider.
Okay, so perhaps you can share that with Sarah, and then we can bring it to the next meeting in November,
Okay,
and we'll pass the
perfect.
proclamation that evening.
Great, thank you.
And maybe just let them know that they should consider the community grants program for any kind of big things they're having in 2023. So kind of big events, be good. Okay. Thank you, Joanne. Notice of motion, next regular public meeting of council, Monday, November 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. No question period. And confirming bylaw, Councillor Winsing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive bylaw 49-2021, and that Council adopt bylaw 49-2021, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, and that bylaw 49-2021 be read a first, second, third time and enacted in open council this 8th day of November 2021.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. And motion to adjourn, Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden. There being no further business to discuss, the meeting was adjourned at 7:50.
All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to everyone for joining us on Facebook Live. Just to remind everybody that November 11th is Remembrance Day, and the next ceremony is in Alexandria at the Cenotaph at 11 a.m. So hope to see as many people out. It should be a beautiful day, so looking forward to that day. So thank you, Council, for joining us tonight, and everybody, have a great evening. Thank you.